Fantastic. We all know that it's been a very challenging year for people across the world. My first question for you is I want to take you back to March 2020. Boris Johnson stood in front of Downing Street, announces a full lockdown for the whole of the UK. I just want to go through and ask you to answer this one by one, what your first thoughts were for SSJ, any concerns and worries that you have, and how you reacted to that. If we could start with Andrew, if you could give that.
Yeah, so my role is largely internal focusing with this regard. So my main concern was how we keep our staff safe, but still manage to provide the services out to keep the rest of the organisation running. Supporting the front line with IT equipment, housekeeping services, maintenance services, whilst keeping all of those staff that I'm responsible for safe.
Fantastic. And Nikki?
So it was very unclear back in March, and one of my kind of concerns was how do we give a very unclear message, some clarity to our staff, especially when things were changing all the time, keeping our staff safe and keeping our residents and service users safe as well, and how can we provide a service when it's locked down, and will the residents isolate, and how do we patrol this or police this? Do we police this? So it was a very interesting time
where it was saying everyone off the streets into accommodation, and we're in Portsmouth. We had overnight accommodation, shared rooms, 30 or 40 people on the streets. We couldn't have been in a worse position, and it was just, what are we going to do? This is really, really difficult. And I remember being in a meeting with Trevor where we were talking with a local authority, and Trevor outlined just exactly how bad it was. And I think we were all just in shock at the time.
Well, it struck me that if we were running loads of shared accommodation, that was going to be unsustainable. And so a quick solution to lots of self-contained units would be to put 50 tents up on the common in Southampton, and then 50 tents in the Victoria Park in Portsmouth. And so we had this idea that we could create some sort of mini festival type encampment which would house people. The Southampton and Portsmouth local authorities were both fairly horrified by this idea. And in fact, both able, over a period of time, able to come up with better solutions. But certainly in the beginning, we were just trying to grapple with how fast is the virus going to progress, how creative or how wild do our new ideas need to be, and how do we tie in what we're doing with what everyone else in our areas are doing as well. What's the council doing? What's the public health doing? What's the NHS going to do? And stuff like that.
Yeah, well, so back in March, we only had the one care home, but all the time we're having discussions about how we can, withdraw staff and provide minimum services and the risks of shared housing. I've got a care home that we can't shield, we can't distance people. We have to give intimate care. It is a shared environment. We have a legal minimum of service that we need to provide, and withdrawing the service was not an option. And we've seen also the impact that the virus had on care homes across the continent, particularly. So yeah, it was pretty scary time.
And out. Just wondering, we've spoken about what the worries and concerns were when lockdown was first mentioned. What are the stories that spring to your mind, sort of like the success stories through the whole of 2020?
I think we've had success in the way that the organisation was able to adapt quickly. So we discovered that we all use Google, but we didn't realise we could use Google Meetings in quite the same way as we've learned how to. Our IT department did a fabulous job in making sure that everyone had the technology that they needed so that people could work from home. And then we just asked staff to make very quick changes to the way they structured their work, and people were just fabulous. So we reduced the number of staff in buildings. We got people to work in different places, and my colleagues will give you more details from specific services. But there was a huge sense of collaboration and commitment, as well as the uncertainty and the nervousness.
Certainly, the fact that we managed to keep COVID out of the vast majority of our services during 2020 through that first wave, that speaks wonders for the staff and the efforts that they've made in supporting residents and service users across the organisation. And it's I don't know as much of a success story, but the individual acts and the team acts of resistance and bravery. Remember at the beginning of the summer in April, just how hot it was. It's hard to remember now, but just how hot it was. And in the care homes, the staff were operating in full PPE throughout that weather. Absolutely amazing effort, and I can't praise them high enough for doing that.
It'll be unfair to single anyone out, because I think, as Trevor indicated, the level of adaptability to staff, from doing one job to having to do something completely different. So substance misuse workers are very used to having people come into the centre. They're now, real concern is to keep people safe. They're delivering methadone to individuals' addresses and making sure that vulnerable people were really protected. We were able to open 2 hotels, house 220 homeless people safely in those hotels, which was just astonishing within the time frame that we were able to do that. We were able to open up a house for 10 people. No, sorry, not about 10 people, within 10 days of the announcement, to protect them. Those are astonishing stories. And the staff, the amount of extra time some of the staff have put in to things like the refurb of the building, and to work really hard to set the hotels up and now into the new housing pathway that we have. Yeah, astonishing.
Like the others have said, particularly in that first wave when we didn't know what to do, at Jordan House we had some vacant flats that we'd given to the city really for, it was going to be initially for COVID positive cases, but thankfully at that time there wasn't any, so we used them for COVID protect cases, so those people who were incredibly vulnerable in relation to their significant medical conditions, and the staff went above and beyond to keep those people safe and ensure that they were fed, etc. The staff at Southampton Street, which is an intensive hostel, keeping people in and keeping them occupied was not an easy task at all. Where they've got some of the hardest to house in Southampton, and they continue to do an outstanding job. Rose Road, exactly the same with all the outer projects, making sure that those guys are all safe and understanding that the consequences and what the rules were, etc. as well. The whole lot of them really, and also the staff in central office, the admin team have been really helpful. Charlotte keeping people up to date with the PPE, etc. And the organisation informed. It's been we've really pulled together as an organisation, I think, and it's been actually in the middle of all this kind of chaos, really lovely to see.
So I'm not going to give you something from a service user type perspective, because that's not my bag, but I've been incredibly proud of the fact that we've also kept the organisation moving forward in a strategic way. So we've been, we said at the start of the year we wanted to buy a new care home. We said we wanted to acquire new properties so we could house more vulnerable people, and we've managed to continue doing those things during the pandemic, which is incredible. So yeah, we've got a new care home on board. We've got 3 more properties on board. We, as Mike said, we managed to adapt one of the properties we bought in super quick time so we could help 10 people who needed to be isolating to get a roof over their head. So we've managed to carry on the big picture things during the same time as we've done all this amazing work where we've had to be so reactive and quick on our feet and so on and so forth. So it's not just that we do the immediate things well. We've managed to keep the overall progress of the organisation moving forward as well, which is great.
And coming from the fundraising point of view, we've just done our Christmas campaign, haven't we? Which we wanted to raise £5,000 to feed as many people as possible, and we ended up with just over £16,000, which included a £5,000 donation from Garmin, but most of that is just made up from general members of the public. Trevor, I mean, I know that you're very proud of that. Is there anything that you've got to say about that appeal?
No, so I think it demonstrates the widespread support we have from many people in our community, individuals, small groups, and so on like that. And it's fabulous that we get this high volume of donations coming in to support our work.
And if people want to support us in 2021, what sort of message, I'll throw this out to all of you, what sort of message would you like to give to them in regards to continuing their support for SSJ?
In small scale items of expenditure, so if residents need help with washing soap or towels or items of clothing, so we run a residents welfare fund for things like that. But then at the other end of the scale, as Andy said, we have acquired some properties recently, and although we get government grants towards that, we need to put in furniture ourselves, and some of the building costs have gone up recently. So some of the money we're being given will be invested in buildings and provide us with long-term benefits for our residents going forward over many years.
I think we never know what we're going to need necessarily. So, I mean, cash is always good. Cash allows us to do those things that really make a difference to our residents. For instance, we are looking at setting up some online music and singing activities in our care homes, and cash donations allow us to do that, to provide those extras that we're not otherwise funded to do. But also we never know what's around the corner. So looking back to March, April, when PPE and hand sanitizer was in such short supply, and with donations of custom-made hand sanitizer from Bombay Sapphire Gin and things like that, which were invaluable. And we probably have the best smelling hand sanitizer as well.
Following years.
Yeah, I think although we get grant funding to do a lot of our work, it always feels that we've never got enough to do what we want. And especially, back to Tony's point really, it's in those smaller amounts that can have a really large impact for individuals in helping them get set up or overcome individual barriers through hardship allowances and payments that can really provide something additional and supportive to the individual. So so it always feels that we need more money and can use it really, really well.
To be honest with you, the others have kind of said it all. Having hostels, etc., then just things to pass the time as well has been really helpful, and arts and crafts and things, and we've been decorating some of the communal spaces, etc., and that's actually got everybody involved, and without the kind of support and donations, we wouldn't be able to necessarily do that otherwise and make the place a slightly more colourful place to live. So that's hugely appreciated.
It's just about the some of the money that we get. It's not a particularly sexy sort of thing, but we sometimes struggle with the sort of the background things that we have to buy to keep the business running. And one of the things that we spent money on this year, where we got these additional monies in, was on IT kit, so that staff can work from home properly and effectively, including mass rollout of mobile phones as well as laptops, as well as internet connection, all these sorts of things, and they cost money, and we don't get specific money to do that. So where we get additional funding, that sort of funding is invaluable to pay for things like that. And it's also perhaps something we can look at. We're looking at improving the access to internet services that our clients have got in our houses and that sort of thing. And that's it's clearly been important for us as an organisation to deliver services, but also for residents to pass the time, as Nikki was saying, and access services that are only available online. And that's a project that that people's fundraised money can go towards to help service users directly, as well as organisational communications and that sort of thing.
Fantastic. And I just want to finish up on one last thing. Obviously, it's our 50th anniversary next year. I know a number of you have been here for a few years. So I just wondered, let's start with Trevor. Have you got any stories from your time at SSJ that that you might be able to tell us?
So I think somewhere I've got a photograph of us cutting the cake to celebrate our 25th anniversary. Yes, so I'm looking forward to the 50th. I think we need to celebrate our successes. We need to make use of the opportunity it provides us to tell our story to the wider world. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I agree. The other day when I sent an email out about this meeting today, I think Tony was a bit offended because he was like, "Yeah, people have been here longer than me. Come on." So, but Tony, I've got to ask you, 50th anniversary coming up. Any thoughts? Any stories that you want to share?
I think for me, it's the changes the organisation has been through. So, there's maybe 30, 40 people worked here when I started. We were just in Southampton, a handful of houses and a hostel. And to see the organisation that we've grown into has been quite something. I think there's some of the things on the olden days you look back on. We used to make it up as we went along. In a good way, we could identify a need and we could just go out and meet it. And now we've been sort of brought into a more professionalised commissioning environment. And sometimes it feels a bit more constrained by that. But on the other hand, I think we and other organisations like us, we've become more professional, we've become more accountable, and all of that is a good thing. So yeah, it's been quite a journey. It's been quite a journey.
Mike, I know that the email that Tony sent to me mentioned that you've been here for a lot longer. So do you have any stories or thoughts?
Not longer. I think me and Tony joined in the same year. We were project workers just up the road from each other, and we'd often go around each other's projects when we'd had enough of the residents. I don't know. There's so many stories I've probably forgot way more than I could remember. Having a particularly bad memory, but I think my favourite is from this year. Actually, it's the setting up of Havant Road and securing the housing for 10 incredibly medically vulnerable individuals, and seeing how relieved they were when they were housed with us, that they were off the streets, they were off shared accommodation, they were fearful for their lives of getting COVID, because these were the people that were dying back in March. And they came into the accommodation, they got these lovely rooms, self-contained, food was being brought to the service, so were their medications from the substance misuse team. It happened within 10 days, and they were so grateful. It's hard to, you sometimes in the senior management or management teams, sometimes you miss the, seeing people come in and they're crying, they're so grateful for being taken off the street and made safe. So for me, partly because it's easy to remember, and it only happened this year, but that's a good one.
And onto the new kids on the block. Nikki, have you got any stories or thoughts about your time so far?
Yeah, when I saw this, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm just going to be completely in the shade, because my colleagues have probably done a decade between, a century really between them all within SSJ. But for me, I guess oh gosh, where do I start? I really enjoy visiting the projects and the services. I love meeting the clients, etc. And what has impressed me since joining SSJ is that Trevor, being the chief exec of an organisation, actually knows quite a lot of the residents and the clients. And wherever I've worked before in the charity sector, that's just never happened. So I was that's something that really impressed me with SSJ, and the fact that everybody's just so supportive of each other, and I thought that was really nice. Plus, working at 10 South Acton Street is awesome. Doing a shift there, when it was just me and a student on donation day, that was something I won't forget easily.
That's fantastic. And Andrew, have you got any stories or thoughts?
So I get a lot of my stories secondhand, because a lot of my time is spent in the office. But one of my favourite, really quite recent stories was, obviously we've been developing properties in a sort of bigger way for us as an organisation over the last 2 or 3 years, really. And we've been desperate to try to deliver more self-contained accommodation, but it's very difficult for us to be able to afford to acquire or build flats, 1-bedroom flats, because that's what everyone wants to do, and we've got to compete with the private sector. So we thought a bit outside of the box and thought, well, hang on, if we buy bigger houses, maybe we can just put en suites in every room, and so people don't have to share a bathroom, because that's a nice thing to not have to share someone else's toilet or shower, or and just have the kitchens as a shared facility. And so we kind of pushed the boat out a bit and spent a bit extra money at one of the larger properties that we bought and put en suites in all the rooms. And me being a finance person, I was a bit nervous about the amount of money we'd spent and whether or not this would have the impact that people were telling me it would have. And we've got the housekeeping team, as I mentioned before, who go around to the properties and help the residents clear up and look after themselves in very basic ways with regards to hygiene and health and that sort of thing. And the housekeeping team knocked on the door of this new development where we put these en suites in, and they got met at the door apparently by a couple of the service users and said, "We don't need you today, girls, but we'd really like you to come in and have a look at how wonderfully clean we've kept this place, because it's amazing." And the fact they were so proud of what we'd given them, what we provided for them, not what we'd given them, was brilliant. And it was music to my ears, because it actually made the sort of punt with regards to spending that much more money worth it. So that was brilliant.
I heard that story a few months back, and I put it into one of the blogs on the website because I thought that was just such a charming story. Before we head off, I'm just going to give you all the chance to have the stage one more time. If there's anything that you want to say that we haven't covered, starting with you, Andrew.
A massive thank you to our staff, really. They've been incredible this year. I think we've asked a huge amount of our staff, both in services and outside of services. Obviously in services, we've asked people to put themselves literally in the face of the virus and put up with the fact that they might end up getting it. And the response to that has been amazing. People could easily turn around and told us where to go with that sort of request, but they haven't. But also the staff in the back office environments where we literally closed the office one day and said, "You're going to have to work from home tomorrow," and people have, and people have made do in their bedrooms and their kitchens, on their laps, whilst potentially trying to homeschool their children, and they've really made massive efforts and really put themselves out to make sure that either services are kept going in the front line or services are kept going with regards to support from internally within the organisation to the frontline services. And it's just been wonderful to see and experience that sort of thing happening with our staff. So massive thank you to the staff team, I think.
Fantastic. Nikki, the stage is yours. Is there anything that you want to say that we haven't covered?
Well, I would replicate absolutely everything that Andy has said, and it's just a huge thank you. We couldn't do it without you. You know, everybody's worked above and beyond, not just doing the jobs, but kind of, you know, bubbling staff, dealing with the challenges that our residents have thrown up. You know, had increased online meetings with various services all over, having to adapt to technology, which, you know, I'm the first one to hold my hand up, it's not my forte. And, you know, everybody's is worked hard to master it. And, you know, also, I should have said about in earlier on, but a huge thanks to Michelle for bringing in some of these grants and driving a lot of this stuff forward. So, you know, without her, we wouldn't have the new van at Jordan House, for example. We wouldn't have the money to do up the communal room in Southampton Street, and so much more. So, you know, I'm really grateful for and all the help and support that I've received from my teams as well as my colleagues on this video. You know, huge thank you.
Yeah, I work with Michelle and she's an absolute powerhouse, and I learned so much from her, I really do. Mike, have you got anything that you want to add that we might not have covered?
Yeah, only because obviously easy to thank the staff because they've been absolutely brilliant. I don't want to just do that again. So I would just like to thank the sort of board really of the Society of St James, because they allow us to do to take a lot of risk. Setting up these hotels, moving as fast as we were with some of the housing and doing the refurbs relies on us having to spend the money up front on staff and a lot of equipment before the council have worked out how to pay us or how to do all those sorts of things. You know, times are, you know, I've been asking to hold off, you know, and let us carry on, even though we had no money to do the work, and that takes a lot of risk. So yeah, so thanks to the board for giving us that environment really to work in, and to therefore be at the forefront of keeping people safe over this year.
Absolutely, Tony.
Yeah, I'd like to add that the incredible effort that staff have put in has come at no small personal cost. You know, people, you know, our staff did an amazing job before this started, and I never had to manage this additional sort of level of concern and anxiety and stress. So I'd like to put a shout out to our managers who have done an amazing job at managing that, at supporting that. They've been counsellors, they've listened to people's fears, they've come up with solutions, while all at the same time managing all those same emotions themselves. So I think our managers have done an absolutely fantastic job during this, and they've really held the whole thing together. So. And
finally, Trevor, over to you for the last time.
So I'm obviously hugely proud of what we've done as an organisation. So the staff have been fabulous, the board have been fabulous. And when you think of when we started off, so our 50th anniversary, we'll be celebrating the start of a night shelter in Southampton where we had 15 men in a big communal hallway, in a big communal hall, all living in a very open way as a very fundamental basic night shelter. So moving from there, over the last 50 years, we've been able to develop hugely, and we are still focusing on providing services to vulnerable people, but very optimistic about what we can do going forward.
Fantastic. It's been a pleasure talking to you all. I know how hard you work. You know, being able to work under you and listen to all of you and hear your stories has been a real privilege. Thank you very much. And I'm sure that you'll echo what I'm going to say, that if anyone wants to support us and support the charity, best thing to do is to have a look on our website, ssj.org.uk, and they can follow through from there, find our blog, as well as ways to donate and information about the charity and what we do as well. So once again, thank you all very much for coming along and talking to me today. And yeah, enjoy the rest of 2021.
Thank you.